The officer thought he had control. He thought the badge on his chest and the pistol on his hip made him untouchable. But in one moment, everything he believed about power, respect, and justice shattered into pieces he'd never be able to gather again. It was a calm night, the kind of suburban quiet broken only by the occasional hum of tires on fresh asphalt and the dim glow of overhead street lamps throwing long shadows over the empty road. A sleek black SUV cruised along with silent ease, barely disturbing the air as it passed beneath rows of oaks lining the sidewalk. Behind the wheel sat General Calvin Briggs, a man whose posture radiated discipline even when off duty. His civilian clothes, a plain charcoal shirt and slacks, couldn't hide the unmistakable aura of authority forged through decades of service. 32 years in the United States Army had taken him from the dirt fields of boot camp to the Pentagon's war rooms, where the fate of thousands rested on his command. But tonight, he was just another man heading home after a long day of military strategy sessions. Then, the flash of red and blue erupted in his rearview mirror. He sighed, already knowing what this was. He wasn't speeding. He hadn't swerved. Nothing about his driving warranted this. Yet he signaled, slowed down, and pulled to the side. The car behind him rolled to a stop. A door opened. Out stepped a young officer with a square jaw and an eagerness that reeked of inexperience and insecurity. Officer Nathan Derling was still new to the force, but he carried himself like he had something to prove. To his supervisors, to the public, to himself, especially when the person he was pulling over didn't look like he belonged in a vehicle like that. Not on this street. His hand lingered over the holster at his side as he approached the driver's side window with theatrical confidence. He knocked hard, more than necessary. License and registration. General Briggs, calm as ever, gave a polite nod. Good evening, officer. May I ask what I'm being stopped for? Just give me your license and registration. Derling replied sharply, ignoring the question. Briggs complied, handing over his ID and papers with a quiet patience. Derling squinted at the ID, then glanced back at the man in front of him, disbelief flickering across his face. This some kind of joke, he scoffed. Where'd you steal this car from? Briggs had faced worse. He'd dealt with hostile generals, foreign dignitaries, even insurgent gunfire. What was one cocky officer with a badge? This is my vehicle, Briggs said, voice level. I'm General Calvin Briggs, United States Army. Derling gave a dismissive chuckle, waving the ID like it was a fake. Oh, sure. And I'm Secretary of Defense. Step out of the vehicle. Briggs held the wheel for a beat, then sighed and unbuckled. He had seen this pattern before. His medals, his rank, his service, none of it mattered to someone who saw only his skin. He stepped out slowly, spine straight. Derling eyed him like he was prey. Hands on the car. Now, what's your reason for detaining me? Briggs asked, eyes steady. Because I said so. The general kept his gaze steady, years of battlefield composure holding him steady. You're making a serious mistake. Derling sneered. We'll see about that. Without warning, he spun Briggs around and slammed him against the SUV. The cuffs snapped tight, tighter than needed. Briggs winced slightly, but said nothing. He had restrained violent suspects with less force than this. He closed his eyes, just for a moment. Not in fear. In control. Waiting. You just made the worst mistake of your career, he said evenly. Oh yeah. Derling laughed. And who's going to stop me? Briggs turned his head slightly, the faintest curve of a smile on his lips. One call. That's all it takes. What? To your lawyer? No. To the Pentagon. The smirk drained from Derling's face like water through a sieve. Derling shoved him into the back of the cruiser, the bars of the cage making it feel more like punishment than procedure. He returned to the driver's seat, still smug, still unaware of what was unfolding. To him, it was just another arrest. Just another guy trying to talk big. Just another supposed threat off the street. Inside the cruiser, General Briggs waited. The precinct bustled, as usual when they arrived. Fullness hung. A few bored officers sipped lukewarm coffee. The fluorescent lights flickered slightly above cracked tile floors. Derling led Briggs through the doors, his voice loud and self-satisfied. Got another one. Claims he's some kind of high-ranking general or something. Probably watched too many war movies. A few officers looked up. One froze. Sergeant Harold Riggins had been on the force for over 20 years. He was the kind of cop who remembered names. And he remembered that name. His coffee paused midair. He stepped closer, eyes narrowing. When he got a good look at Briggs, the blood drained from his face. "Sir, are you General Calvin Briggs?" he asked. Briggs gave a single, calm nod. Riggins spun toward Durling, his jaw tight. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" Durling scoffed. "Yeah, stopped a car thief with a good imagination." Riggins didn't argue. He didn't lecture. He reached for the nearest phone and punched in a number most officers didn't even know existed. "Who are you calling?" Durling demanded. Riggins didn't respond. The room quieted. A voice answered on the other end. "This is General Winston Hayes at the Pentagon." "Who is this?" Riggins swallowed hard. "Sir, this is Sergeant Harold Riggins of the Oak Bend Police Department. We have General Calvin Briggs in custody." The silence that followed could have swallowed the entire station. "You have who?" the voice growled. "General Calvin Briggs, sir." A beat. Then came the words that ended Durling's career in an instant. "You have 10 seconds to release him. If he is not out of custody immediately, I will have every federal agent in this country at your front door." Riggins didn't need to hear it twice. He practically sprinted to the holding area, fumbling with the keys. The rest of the station was paralyzed. Conversations died. Laughter faded. The weight of what had just happened settled over every uniform like a storm cloud. The cell opened. Briggs stood inside, shoulders back, gaze unwavering. "Sir," Riggins began, his voice cracking, "I deeply apologize. You're free to go." Briggs didn't rush. He stepped forward with quiet dignity, pausing only to rub the raw red lines the cuffs had left around his wrists. Then he turned toward Durling, who stood frozen near the booking desk, pale, shaking. "You asked earlier," Briggs said quietly, "who would stop you." The silence was deafening. "Let me be very clear," he continued, his tone sharpened by steel and certainty. "This is not over." Then the sound of sirens. More than a dozen black vehicles screeched to a halt outside. Men in suits poured in, swift, efficient, lethal in demeanor. The lead agent strode forward, badge raised. "Officer Nathan Durling," he barked. "By order of the Department of Defense, you are under arrest." Durling blinked, mouth agape. "What? Arrested? For what?" "For the unlawful detention of a high-ranking United States military officer. You have the right to remain silent." He didn't even resist. His hands were yanked behind his back and locked in cuffs, the very same ones he'd used on General Briggs. And then, as he was pressed against the wall, his eyes met Briggs one last time. But Briggs didn't stop. He didn't glare. He didn't say another word. He walked out, silent, unshaken. Justice had already spoken for him. And in the minds of every officer who had witnessed it, a lesson echoed louder than any reprimand. True power doesn't need to shout. It commands through presence, truth, and integrity. And when justice finally moves, it moves like thunder,